both in today's first reading and the gospel reading, there is an allusion to the second coming of Christ, his final coming at the end of time. So in today's first reading from Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, St. Paul is talking about the grace that God has given in order to be strengthened, in order to be able to persevere, and he's giving thanks for all of these things. So he says, so that you are not lacking in any spiritual gift as you wait for the revealing of our Lord Jesus Christ. This revealing of our Lord Jesus Christ refers to his second coming, when he will be seen by all. And it goes on, he will also strengthen you to the end so that you may be blameless on the day of our Lord Jesus Christ. So that you may be blameless on the day of our Lord Jesus Christ. Well, that's a clear reference to the day of the Lord when he returns in glory. And this theme is addressed in today's gospel reading, the importance of staying awake, of being prepared, not just for the second coming of Christ, but for our own personal encounter with Christ, or appearing before the judgment seat of Christ. In other words, at our own death. But notice how he talks about the faithful and the wise slave, and we think, oh, well, we are not slaves. It doesn't apply to us. We don't have other slaves under our authority, so this doesn't apply to us. But it actually does, because we are all servants of the Lord. In one sense, we are called to look to our Lord as our master, and we as kind of slaves who serve our Lord in a good sense. Usually when we think of slaves, we think of it in a very negative light, in a very negative sense. And even though we may not have people under our authority, we do influence everyone around us. And we might say, oh, well, I'm not going to beat up anyone, or I'm not going to get drunk with drunkards. But the whole point our Lord is trying to make is we are prone to become selfish and self-centered. And we are all prone to pride. And when we give in to these things and are not striving to overcome them, to control them, we will end up harming or hurting the people around us, maybe treating them disrespectfully, maybe, manipulating them in one way or another. So we are capable of being guilty of some of these things that our Lord is alluding to, at least to a certain extent. By drunkenness, he means, well, self-indulgence, right? I'm sure we're all prone to a certain amount of self-indulgence. And notice how he says that, you don't know when the master is going to return, and what's going to happen if he finds you in this kind of situation, acting the way that you're acting. Well, it's going to be very bad for you. You might be prevented from making it to heaven because of these faults and shortcomings. This is what he's saying. So he's saying this is the time to act, this is the time to rectify yourself, to change yourself, to improve yourself, because you don't know the day of the Lord. You don't know the day of your death. And notice the allusion also to the thief, right? So if the owner of the house had known in what part of the night the thief was coming, he would have stayed awake and would not have allowed his house to be broken into. So if we know someone's going to break into our house or our place of residence, of course we're going to take steps to avoid that from happening. And when he speaks of the thief coming, well, he's kind of alluding to the fact that we don't know when it's going to come. Even if somebody knew that their house was going to be broken into, they don't know exactly what time in the night. So they're going to be very, very vigilant all night long. And the whole point is, well, we don't know when our death is going to be, so we need to be vigilant on a daily basis. But when we think of a thief, well, the devil is the thief. He wants to snatch our souls, to steal our souls away from God. And often we are not aware of his manipulation of us, of the temptations that he gives us to get us to give in to selfishness or pride or whatever it may be. And so we are allowing ourselves to be manipulated in this way without realizing it. And so we are in extreme danger. So all the more reason why we need to be vigilant and prayerful. So prayer kind of keeps the evil spirits and their influence at bay. They can still tempt us and influence it, but not to the same extent. So we need to pray regularly. We need to have a good routine of prayer. But, the whole kind of analogy our Lord gives is, the master is delayed in returning. The master is away. He's not here. Nobody's watching me. I can get away with it. That's the attitude of many people. Imagine young people, some of the things they do, or some of the things they might look at. Would they do those things if their parents were watching them? Probably not. Or you think of people working under a boss. The boss is away. And when the boss is away, the mice will play kind of thing, right? They slack off, they just socialize, maybe they spend time doing things they shouldn't be doing. But when the boss is around, it's like everybody's like very diligent, working very hard, and doing everything the way they're supposed to be doing. It's often that way. Well, the whole point is that we kind of forget that God is watching us. God sees everything that we do. We can't get away with these things. We have to acknowledge our shortcomings, our failures, our inclinations to whatever it may be. And we need to do something to rectify them. And often I think part of the problem is, we think, it's okay, it's not a big deal, God is not going to be so angry, or we're not going to be punished for it, or it might just be a light punishment. Well, we don't really know. We don't know. We don't know if, even if we make it to purgatory, how long of a purgatory we're going to have. If we really knew what purgatory was like, we would do everything in our power to avoid it. Spiritual authors, they point out that the greatest suffering conceivable here on earth is not nearly as great as the least amount of suffering in purgatory. This is just purgatory, not hell. Purgatory. Now, it's true that the souls in purgatory, they suffer willingly, but their suffering is far greater, far more intense than any suffering we could have here. So the whole point is, yes, we do need to make a good examination of conscience. We need to acknowledge the things that we may be prone to. Often we're very blind to the things that we do, or fail to do sometimes. We're very blind. And as when we draw close to God in prayer, God enlightens us. God allows us to see things, to see ourselves. It's good to make a daily examination of conscience, as I mentioned before, but prayer can enlighten us tremendously. So we need to be vigilant. We need to be mindful of the fact that God is always present. And yes, he will return in glory. We will encounter him at our death. At least we will appear before the judgment of God, both at our death and at his second coming. And we need to prepare, and now is the time to prepare. Just a reminder, tomorrow evening, Friday evening at 7 p.m., there is a meeting for the youth of our parish, and the theme is on how to live the Gospels, or what it means to live out the Gospels as a Christian, how we live our lives. It's an opportunity to ask questions from our lay pastoral associate also, and there will be some snacks as well as some games. So we invite all the youth of our parish to come out for that this Friday at 7 p.m.